Hi book friends, I'm Erin, and this is Erin Go Read. Today is part 1 of my August wrap-up. I've had a pretty good start to the month so far, definitely in quality of the books I'm reading. So I am participating in the N.E.W.T.s Magical Readathon, and my aim is to be an author. So I have 9 books, I believe, that are mandatory, and then there are a few more that I would like to tackle if I can. The first book is my acceptable grade in charms, and that is to read a book with a beautiful cover. So I actually mostly listened to the audiobook of The Lost Man by Jane Harper. The narrator of this is Stephen Shannon. He has done her 2 previous books, but that are part of the Erin Falk series, and is wonderful. It's just beautiful male Australian voice. He does such a great job. So this is a standalone mystery in the Australian outback, I believe in Queensland, about a family. So one of the brothers, Cameron, the middle brother, is found dead, and where we follow the perspective of Nathan, the oldest brother. There's a younger brother, Bub, and other family members, and their suspicions are everywhere, and family secrets are coming out. So now Nathan has to deal with the death of his brother, the mystery of the death, the family secrets that are coming out or resurfacing, and the implications or ramifications when the murder is solved. This book, like all of Jane Harper's books that I've read so far, is atmospheric and gritty. You really feel like you're in the outback, and in this very hot California weather. I very much felt like I was out in the outback with them today. So I live in the Sacramento area, so I'm about 100 miles inland of San Francisco, and it was 110 degrees today. It probably still is. It's 7:15 and it is still blazing hot outside. My dog is dying to go out for a walk, but he will fry his little feet off if we try to go outside right now. So 110 degrees, by the way, is like 43-ish degrees Celsius, if that helps you. So I definitely recommend anything by Jane Harper, and definitely The Lost Man. Next up is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This is my first Colson Whitehead, and it definitely won't be my last. This was a really great introduction to Colson Whitehead as a writer. This is a historical fiction, but it is based on a real story of this all-boys reform school where they had discovered like the burial ground of these boys. So the story takes place in segregated Florida in the 1960s, and we follow Elwood Curtis, a bright young boy with great potential, and you're just so cheering for this young man, and then he is wrongly prosecuted for a crime that he had nothing to do with, and just a real statement about the racism and the injustice that happened at that time, and you know, potentially now as well. But in this book, we're looking at the 1960s. So we're mostly following Elwood at the Nickel Academy and the horrors and atrocities that occur there, and it reminded me a little bit of Jaws, how like in the movie Jaws, your imagination does more of the horror part than the actual imagery did. And so that's kind of what happens here, where Whitehead sets you up for the horror that you are now imagining, and he doesn't quite go there, but that may even be worse, I'm not sure. Whitehead weaves this horrific tale of abuse and racism with stunning prose. 5 stars for The Nickel Boys. The Nickel Boys satisfies my A in Defense Against the Dark Arts, a book with black under the cover, as you see. And I want to give just a couple of short examples of Colson's writing, and these have nothing to do with the actual plot, so I'm not giving anything away. Just an example of the writing. He's describing someone else. He'd outgrown his shirt, and the pressure against the buttons made him look upholstered. I love that. And then we have, even the roaches were of a noble sort, scurrying when he turned on the bathroom light instead of ignoring his presence. He took their modesty as a touch of class. I just love that. I can't wait to get into more Colson Whitehead. Next up, we have Lanny by Max Porter, and this is my E in Defense Against the Dark Arts it was the first book that I recalled from my TBR when I watched the announcement video. I gave this 4 stars, although I think basically the book's a lot smarter than me, and I think upon reread it will probably be 5 stars. I'm not quite smart enough for this book yet, so this will definitely be reread in the future. This is a fairy tale-like story about a young boy named Lanny who lives with his family in a village a ways outside of London. His father commutes back and forth between the village and London. And the people in the town and the kind of boogeyman of the town, dead Papa Toothwort. The structure of this book makes it really more than a story, and it's really an experience. I read this book. I imagine this would I've heard really good things about the audiobook, but I think you would be missing out if you weren't also physically reading the book. So I think it might be really interesting to read along in the book as you're listening to the audiobook. That would probably be a great way to experience this book. Otherwise, just read it and enjoy. I don't really want to get into the plot of the book. Just know that it's about Lanny. It's about the presence of dead Papa Toothwort and in the village, and we never hear directly from Lanny. We hear about Lanny from all sorts of different people. It is brilliantly written. It's creepy. It's touching. I definitely recommend Lanny. And maybe you're smarter than me and you'll give it 5 stars. I am sweating. I cranked my AC up to 80 degrees because if I had it any cooler than that, it keeps popping on and it's way too loud for me to record, so hopefully I can make it another few minutes. To complete my the subject of Defense Against the Dark Arts, my O in Defense Against the Dark Arts, which the challenge was a book written by an English author or that was set in England, and this is both. This is Ian McEwan's Machines Like Me. So this is literary alternative fiction / science fiction. So this takes place in an alternative 1980s London. Charlie is our main character. He's around 30. He's in love with his neighbor Miranda. I think she lives upstairs or next door from him. And he very early on in the book he's come into a large sum of money, and he ends up purchasing one of the very first synthetic humans available, Adam. He wanted an Eve, but they were sold out, so he had to settle for an Adam. So Adam is kind of the catalyst for bringing Miranda and Charlie together, and they each program like half of his personality. You basically boot him up, and then you choose certain personality traits that you would like in your Adam, and then through machine learning, he kind of becomes his own self, or it becomes its own thing. That's part of the question. So we follow the relationship of this trio against the backdrop of political turmoil and war. Past historical events and political figures are blended in with current day topics and issues as McEwan delves into big philosophical questions about humanity. I absolutely love this. This was my first Ian McEwan, and it definitely won't be my last. It's really exciting when you discover an author who has a huge backlist. I recently have picked up 2 of his books, Saturday and Atonement. I picked those up when my local bookstore was, used bookstore was going out of business. I had a bunch of store credit to use up, and so I picked those up because I knew he was an author that I wanted to get to. And this was definitely a really good introduction to him, I think. I don't know. If you've read Ian McEwan, let me know what you think about him, especially if you've read this as well. It would be great to know, is this on par for what he normally does? I'm not sure. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Finally, my herbology book. Let's see, this is outside of my mandatory reading, I think. This was just a book I chose to read. An A in herbology, I need an audiobook. Maybe that is, I don't know, whatever. I read or listened to Daisy Jones and the Six on audiobook. I kept hearing over and over again how people love this book, and especially the audiobook is a great way to listen to it. So I went on a trip last weekend, and I had a lot of driving time, so this was a great companion on that drive. So this is essentially like a VH1 behind the music look at this fictional band, and where Daisy Jones meets the band The Six, and they become Daisy Jones and the Six. It's loosely based on Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. And I actually have had the pleasure of meeting Stevie Nicks. She came when my husband was first injured. We were in Bethesda, Maryland at the National Naval Medical Center, and Stevie came to visit the injured troops and their families. She gave us an autographed iPod full of music. Not all of it was her music. And she was just a really sweet lady. So I have a little bit of an extra interest, I suppose, in this because of that. And it had me more... Listening to this had me more interested in like the actual story of Fleetwood Mac. I only know little bits and pieces. Anyhow, this book and this audiobook in particular was really fun. It felt like a real like rock and roll roller coaster. Taylor Jenkins Reid has a way of really drawing you into her characters and their experiences, and so I highly recommend this guy. I gave it 3.5 stars. Definitely recommend the audiobook. So these are the books that I've read in the first half of August. It's been a really excellent reading month so far. I hope the trend continues for the rest of the month as well. I'd love to know in the comments if you've read any of these or you'd be interested in them. Are you an Ian McEwan fan or do you hate him? What should I avoid? What should I look for? I don't know. Talk to me in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you around the tubes.